I'd like to welcome all of you to the School of Media and Public Affairs, where we like to say media is the crossroads of all that we do. Half of our students, our undergrads, major in journalism and mass communication, the other half in political communication. Tonight is the political communications turn, and we'll be talking a lot about that. And we're really thrilled to have two communications experts, political communication experts. One is a pioneer of campaign media tactics, and we like to say other is a master practitioner, and brings you such gems as the one you just saw, plus a lot more. And we'll be talking about that here this evening. I want to say a couple thank yous because they are more than in order for this event here this evening. One is to Nina Seavey, who is the co-director with me for the Center for Innovative Media. And at the Center for Innovative Media, we like to think of ourselves as a do tank, not a think tank. So we do with media that's on the cutting edge. And in fact, Arun is a fellow at the Center for Innovative Media this year and is enlightening all of us as he works with our students and our faculty and does some of his own projects, and we're watching him very closely.
Yeah,
because we actually don't trust him.
Like,
so
don't think I don't notice you lock down the
I do. We follow you everywhere you go. I'd also like to thank Samara. Where's Samara sit? She is our communication and marketing director. She's helped put this together this evening. I'd like to thank Dan Reed, who is sitting over here. Dan really helped put this evening's event together and work the phones to make sure that Arun would actually show up when he said he would show up. Like I said, it's not going to be an easy ride for Arun. And Dan will be.
He wore a suit. Get away with that.
Excuse me?
He wore a suit. Now he gets away. You know what I mean? On all the.
Well, that's what
all the slob stuff's coming to me.
Well, that's there is a media bias around it. And I'd like to thank Colette DeVoe, who is in your office, right? Colette in your office. Where's Colette? There's Colette. Thanks, Colette. Tonight's discussion is important and timely. I think you'd all agree. Campaigns, political offices have totally changed. I covered my first campaign in 1976 as a young, not quite out of college, a kid up in Vermont, as a matter of fact, a totally unknown woman running for governor by the name of Stella Hackle. You'd have to wonder how anybody named Stella Hackle could possibly win, and she didn't. Right up through presidential campaigns and where we are now. And my goodness, how things have changed. Actually, candidates now announce their candidacies online, hold their news conferences online, raise their money through the digital masses. The pioneer of this digital domain really is Joe, as you probably know. I mean, he's a remarkable man who was there at a remarkable time. He has been said to be by, I think the New Republic was the man who reinvented campaigning, and has been at the forefront of political campaigning for 30 years. In fact, we were talking just outside the door that Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, my first, I advanced his first presidential trip in November 7th, 1979. So.
You weren't there when he couldn't answer Roger Mudd's
That
question.
was the day. That was absolutely.
That was your first day?
That was the first.
You all familiar with the famous Ted Kennedy moment that undid his campaign when he was asked by Roger Mudd, why are you running for president? And he said, it wasn't the hump.
Yeah, totally unprepared.
That was your first day?
Yeah, that was the first day of the campaign.
But that was your first day on the job?
And it was the first day on the job and the first day of the campaign.
Well, it only went uphill from there, right?
Yeah, it was, well, he didn't scream or anything.
No. Whatever are you referring to? We were thinking about what room we could be. 307, 308, yeah! Most recently, Joe was a senior strategist and media consultant for Jerry Brown's run for California governor. And as you know, he was the campaign manager for Howard Dean's run, where he really pioneered the empowerment message. We'll be talking a lot about that. President Barack Obama and Arun here kind of grabbed that in trying to take the movement by the horns since. As I mentioned, Arun is with our Center for Innovative Media and has been a fellow. I don't know if any of you have been in classes with him, but you'll see why he's so popular when you hear him speak in a minute if you haven't. He directed things like that and the President's Weekly Address, this West Wing Week. How many episodes of West Wing Week did you do?
I did 66 in a row. Did not miss a single week.
Anybody seen West Wing Week? If you haven't, go
still doing
Google
it.
West Wing Week.
They're still making them.
Your mic sounds very funky. Can you
I can, but I will
Maybe
tell you, I don't think it will affect the quality because a lavalier mic is an omnidirectional microphone, so it should be.
That's why he's at the Center for Innovative Media. It's just an amazing thing. Arun was a key member of the president's new media team, and he sort of served as his YouTube guru too. So during the 2008 campaign. So Howard Dean was 2003,
2004, yeah, 2003.
Okay, I see. How many people in the room have an iPhone or another smartphone? How many of you own iPads or iPods? Take us back to 2004.
2003.
Three.
So, yeah, there was no such thing. And it wasn't just...
Prehistory.
Yeah, it was there. We didn't have YouTube. YouTube did not exist, right? I mean, there wasn't one person on YouTube or anything resembling it. We started a thing called Dean TV, where we had literally you could put up video and rank it and send it around to your friends and get them to look at it. We had about 200,000 people on it. And our big mistake was after the campaign was over, we'd take it to a VC and call it YouTube, because that's what it really was. But that was it. That's the first.
This
time
could be
we
the Trippi School of Media and Public Affairs now.
Oh yeah, if I had done that, I could have given $100 million to Navy or something.
There won't be a lot of math tonight.
Yeah. But I mean, but there was no YouTube. Twitter barely existed in a lot of ways in the Obama campaign.
Yeah.
So,
It was still like, what am I eating for lunch?
That's what Facebook was sort of at the time. Facebook was literally on a couple of college campuses. I think it branched off of Harvard at that point, but was not didn't have hundreds of millions of people. By the time Obama comes along, 4 years later, the best stat I can give you is on the day the Dean campaign was over, there were 1.4 million blogs on the planet. The day Obama announced, I checked, there were 77 million. So just that kind of factor of not just the number of people on the network, which I think had ramped up pretty significantly, including the number of people with broadband. One of the reasons there was no YouTube in 2003 was broadband was actually just starting to
People
get
were still
picked
doing
up.
AOL dial-up.
Dial-up, yeah. And so even if you put good video online, or if YouTube had started, there weren't enough people who could watch it without it hiccuping every 5 seconds for it to be worth doing. And so all these big changes. I mean, Carville used to say, it's the economy stupid, and what I'd say is it's the network stupid. I mean, the network is getting larger, more people on it, more bandwidth on it, more people with bandwidth, and more people with the tools that are so much more powerful than today than they were in 2000.
So Arun, compare 12 to 4 and what what those tools have turned into. You just came out of, when did you finish up at the White House? Just remind us.
2011, August.
So 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're in the middle of all this. So what do the tools look like now?
Well, it's funny, even the halfway point before going there, like what we did in 2008, which was, or what I did, which is use YouTube in a great extent to put a mass of videos up, all the time, was only possible because YouTube was good enough to play them well, but the world was still standard definition, not high definition. This
is in 08.
In 08, so it was actually a sweet spot because technology was both good and not good. Immediately after the election, in transition, trying to do the same thing, we weren't able to because YouTube made the switch to HD. And so that's well and good if you're in a controlled environment, but when you're like on a plane or a helicopter trying to like upload things to an air card, all of a sudden the file was too big to handle.
So how much impact did you think you were really having in 08? Because there were lots of hiccups in 08.
There were lots of hiccups in 08, but by putting this mass volume of videos up, what we would say is we put extra chairs into the room. So, it wasn't necessarily measuring a metric like, 300 zillion people watched this video or something. Maybe only 6,000 did, or more like 60,000 was our average base hit. But if 200 of those people happened to live in the town where the speech actually was, those people were, more motivated than anything else. So instead of being this sort of mass trying to draw people in. It was, you know, trying to literally add a couple extra chairs in the room, but have them be virtual.
So what were you, go ahead.
Well, like, you know, Will I Am could never have happened in the Dean.
How many of you saw the Will I Am video?
There's no way it would have happened. I mean, there wasn't YouTube.
Even if you
just
performed that, I mean, you might have done it.
No, I've done I've burned a pie for the John Edwards campaign, and it got hundreds of thousands of
That
views.
worked well, Joe.
Yeah, well, hey, okay. So, no, but what I'm saying is that the just the tools that you could have had the talent like a Will I Am make that, you know, come up with that concept and that idea, and it would have been a great video. But like 100,000 people, if you were lucky, would have actually been able to see it.
How many do you know how many people viewed Will I Am?
1 grillion, I think, was the no, I'm not sure, but it's many millions.
It was many millions. I think
Maybe
it was
tens of
I think it
millions,
was.
actually.
I think in the weeks, the first initial weeks, it was 11. During the campaign, I remember it got to 11 million. I mean, that's a number that's.
And we adopted this video as if it was one of our own. We would play it at rallies, you know, along with the videos that
Right.
like I would produce or Kate O'Brien would produce.
And here it had nothing to do with the campaign. Notice the campaign had nothing to do with producing it.
Nope.
I mean, it just shows the other thing that's been going on is the power shift between what the campaign manager and the campaign press operation could
So I'm going to
control
ask you, I mean,
versus somebody out there, in this case Will I Am, doing something that probably created as much buzz during that period than anything the campaign did,
But
if not more so.
so it flips on the other side. The question is, have campaigns? I mean, there's the upside. There's the Will I Am upside to
Right.
campaigns losing control, but there's a downside to campaigns losing control too.
Yes.
Especially now after Citizens United, and anybody can produce an ad, and suddenly you are not responsible for it, and now you're a candidate trying to distance yourself from something that comes along that's embarrassing. I think we've heard Mitt Romney do that.
Or pretending to try to distance yourself
Right.
sometimes.
Or pretending to.
You know, we
distance
see
yourself.
this, you know, non-coordination between super PACs and, you know.
So have campaigns lost control?
I think they're losing the kind of control they used to have. Not just campaigns, but I think a lot of companies, journalism, everybody's losing a little bit of the kind of control they had as a journalist or as a corporate communicator or in the campaign. They've got to, because it's now in people. No one is, everybody didn't, you know, put their hand up when they had, you know, everybody had a smartphone. When that didn't exist, with that smartphone can capture stuff and send it off to, the most interesting one was Whitney Houston just recently. Her death, her hairdresser found the body, turned and immediately called her niece and told her, and her niece tweeted that my aunt just told me she found Whitney dead in the tub. That beat, it turns out, every news organization out there. So the same thing happened in the campaign, and obviously.
Same thing happened with Osama bin Laden.
Right. Yeah. And so it's, you know, it's going to change. It's changing.
How does that help if you were inside a campaign?
Yeah.
How does that help a campaign? Joe, how does that hurt a campaign? Losing control like that.
Well, I mean, frankly, the very first time it happened in a lot of ways was the Dean moment. Dean's screen. I mean, you know, and we can get into I talked about directional lights.
It's an audio problem.
Yeah, it was
that
an
entire
audio-
moment was actually an audio problem.
problem. It was an audio advance problem. It had nothing to do. You want to explain?
You
that?
couldn't hear the crowd that Governor Dean was yelling over, which obviously would have been a more dynamic and beautiful moment than an awkward.
Right. So
You're really saying that is purely an audio moment?
Well, it was created by an bad audio advance. Is the best way to explain it. I would agree with that.
I would agree with that physically, but I will take a step back and say that I think the one piece of the equation we're missing in difference between 2004 2008 is the personality equation. So I think that, you know, I mean, not only do I think that Will I Am was more likely to, you know, want to make a video for Barack Obama than Howard Dean, just because based on, you know, on their standings, but I think that you can have more control if you have the kind of personality at the head that is suggestive of what the campaign is. You know, the kind of hope change things. But you know, it's easy to dismiss or whatever. But there was such a clear.
Don't diss my guy like that, man.
I don't mean to diss your guy like that. I was defending him from audio, but I think there was something.
There's no reason to do that.
There was something people were looking for and not looking for, that when they see this on the screen is an excuse to turn against him. So I think there were people who thought
But what I was
Dean
gonna
was
say-
angry, maybe erratic.
Yeah, and what I was going to say though is what happened was it wasn't just CNN and the cable networks that were running that over and over again. It suddenly, if you had broadband on access, you were watching dance mixes of that stuff that people were just making for fun. I mean, they
Within minutes.
yeah, here we had created this army that was like, love to send out stuff about us, and now they're sending out stuff of our guy, doing the yeah thing. So, which helped.
Could you do that? I mean,
People were really hoping that was going to happen.
Do you have any times I've been introduced by somebody who does the?
Oh, God.
we did not do that.
I know. Thanks, Frank.
You're up. But
Got it. Yeah.
let me come back to the control issue. I'm just curious as to how many in the room are political communication majors or students here with School of Media and Public Affairs. We have polycomers here? Great. So you study a lot agenda setting and framing and how candidates and issues and messages are framed. When you lose control, the framing of your candidate, the type of personality you're trying to build, the issues you're trying to emphasize, the pressure points that you're trying to drill into against the opposition, do you lose control of that too? How do you frame when you've got all that competition?
What I think is going on is that we had these meetings, radio and TV, and radio, obviously, what people sounded like. Somebody with the voice of God tended to reach through better. And you get to TV, and you have Nixon, who people listening to those debates on the radio think Nixon wins. People see Kennedy, young, vibrant. Nixon doesn't look like he's shaved, a little sweaty. Everybody watched him on TV, thought Kennedy won. What I think is happening is this medium is demanding authenticity, which is something I think. So you have good voice, good looks, whatever, how things look, and then you have authenticity. And if you are trying to sell people something that's fake, you're going to get found out now. I mean, there's too many people with a canvas. It's just not going to happen. The thing that I think Obama did better than anybody who's ever run was run a campaign that was truly authentic to him and what he was about. And the people around him.
You think that's better than anybody was running?
Yeah, I really.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking when driving out the difference between those things. Yeah, I do think that just having that foundation.
And so, like, if you're a political communications practitioner, I think the mistake is to think look, anybody can fake anything for 30 seconds on TV, and a good consultant can figure out how to get their candidate or project it with a voiceover and stuff, fake it for 30 seconds.
They did it for Nixon in
and,
'68.
and suck everybody in. You can't fake it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and this medium you can't that's why the macaca moment, it only takes one moment that you get caught not being the guy you've been selling all this time, and everybody just goes whoops, and you do a lot of damage to yourself. So I think the most important thing right now is to understand that being authentic is the requirement, and that's a really dangerous
And do
thing.
you think that's changed and is more pronounced now than the era when it was just television? You had to be a good television candidate.
Yeah,
More, is it revolutionary or evolutionary? In other words, is it just an incremental ad, or is there really something you think that's fundamentally different?
I think it's absolutely fundamentally different. I don't know what you think, but that's.
I think this sort of, especially we're talking about the videos like the YouTube videos, the behind the scenes thing, it is an entirely separate, a new voice that we haven't heard public officials speak in yet. It's not an interview, it's not direct to camera, it's not a press conference, it's not a speech, it's something different, speaking casually. And I think you can see the authenticity thing really reading in that our modern YouTube stars are actually politicians from a variety of temperaments. So you have, the calmness of Barack Obama, but then I would say your second greatest YouTube star in America right now would be Chris Christie, who simply goes on there and yells at people he doesn't like. But
But
Kills
that
it.
people, yeah. that
Kills it.
people
It's
wanna
great.
see
I could watch this stuff all day because it's an honest
They
conversation.
really do need to get a life.
I know, but like, you seen the one where they asked them where the kids go to school, and he's like, none of your business, like.
So, and you think, and you attribute that to authenticity?
Yeah, he genuinely feels that.
But no. But I mean,
Yeah, he's mad,
no, but
possibly hungry.
the audience is attributing that because it's somehow an authentic moment and say, oh, I want to see Chris Christie yell, and that
Yeah,
seems real to me.
his people are mad, and they see a guy who's really being mad. I think this is Newt
Why
Gingrich's
isn't
thing
it just
too.
that? Why isn't it just that people want outrage? When what people tweet, what people seem to be attracted to is outrageously funny, outrageously mad, outrageously outrageous.
My own view is that what's happening is every other medium, the top had complete control. Radio, it was still Nixon could talk, and he had complete control. There's no talking back, no exchange going on. TV, it's just moving from what sounds good to what looks good, and it's still the top that has complete, absolute control. There's no will.i.am. No one out there can create anything that's going to move anything. There's only one other time where this happened. It's the printing press, because before the printing press, the rich could pay a monk or subscribe to write them their handwritten copy of the Bible or important documents or great Greek thinkers or whatever, and no one else could have that information. No one else could do anything with it, and they controlled everything. And then the printing press happens, and guys can print pamphlets, start all kinds of stuff happening out there. And so what's going on is this isn't radio to TV. This is a printing press. The change where the barrier to entry, one person out there can give this, can not only either create a will.i.am kind of video that takes off, but give the campaign an idea that no one in the headquarters thought of, because they're not the smartest people.
I want to ask
it's a much
another
different thing going on.
So let's play on that for a minute. How many? I'm really interested. How many in the room? How many of you tweet or have tweeted? How many of you have retweeted a political article, YouTube, something? So a fifth, maybe 20% or so. So here's a thought, because now I know if I'm a candidate, you're my campaign manager, and you're my videographer, my manager, whatever. In the old days, when I covered campaigns, the cycle was leak something to the New York Times or the Washington Post, get in the morning papers, drive the conversation throughout the day, drive the next cycle of the story, right? You have these story cycles. But now I actually might be thinking this is the more powerful way to communicate, because if each of you have 1,000 friends, and some of them, right.
Right. That's exactly what's
So
going on.
how do you, like, it was easy to leak to the New York Times and plan that whole thing, right?
Right.
How do you plan?
Right, you're just kind of releasing the fish into the river. Yeah.
So what do you do? How do you do that?
Well, that's the power.
How do you maintain discipline of any kind in your message? if
How do
you're
you make
allowing
them do what you
undisciplined
want? How do you
communicators to
make them
communicate
do
it?
what
Yeah,
you
that's
want them to do?
You don't.
Something interesting.
Say something interesting.
Well, you don't make them do anything. What I've been saying is that you've got Goliaths and armies of Davids out there. The net is easy for armies of Davids to kind of coalesce and become evangelists for something that a cause they believe in or
Right,
to
you got
take on
the
Goliath.
true belief, you got the army
Right.
behind you.
And you're trying to give them the slingshots to take out Goliath. And I don't mean like take out Romney or something like that. I'm talking about, but give them the tools to spread the message, right? The best way to explain it is, this is the new world we're in. The new world we're in is 4 of your friends email you or text you saying the movie sucked. It's the worst thing they ever saw this weekend. They can't believe they wasted their money. Okay? Your 4 friends have a lot of power. Why? Because the guys who used to have the power was Universal Studios or MGM, when they spent millions of dollars telling you it's going to be the greatest movie you ever see. Today, 4 friends tell you it sucked. The studio spends $10 million this week telling you it'll be the greatest movie you ever saw. Guess who lost all their power, and guess who has it, and guess who's not going to the movie? You're not going anymore. and no matter how many millions the studio spends, and so that's the shift in.
Okay, so
in-
let's
and
continue
your
to-
friends.
let-
So now, if friends are sending me Will I Am videos saying you got to check out this Obama guy, this is unbelievable, and it's coming from 4 friends, not a movie studio, not the campaign, much more powerful than something that was kind of manufactured by the campaign. I mean,
Okay, but so this is great.
But
so you're literally the movie maker. You were
Yeah.
the guy in the campaign,
Yeah.
behind the
Yeah,
campaign,
faked
making them.
everybody out.
Yeah. So you can fool some of the people sometimes, most of the people, all the time. But so how are you competing against it? What kind of movie are you making? Because, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that the evolutionary, revolutionary thing comes in here, in which, like, we do want this amplification of a message, but we don't want, like, user-generated content, which is something that I get a lot of crap about when I speak at these things from people, your age. They're like, how come you don't support user-generated content or whatever? Because I don't want to watch a bunch of crappy movies that a bunch of amateurs made. That's not something I'm interested in. So I do think, that the craftsmanship of the message, especially when it comes in video, matters to the point where someone, as your audience member, wants to simply amplify that and not necessarily to add all of their own little touches to it, to the movie. Presenting them with a decision. Is the movie good? Is the movie bad?
Yeah.
I don't want
what's the best thing you
I don't
did?
want an essay about how this is
So
or
what's the
isn't
most
like.
effective thing you think you did on the campaign?
I think the most effective thing was probably the least sexy thing, which was making the decision to setting up the infrastructure for live streaming almost every single thing that the future president did, because it allowed, the immediacy of it happening again. We'd hear it from people. It was anecdotal, like someone would be like, hey, I saw that live stream, I couldn't make it to the event that was down the street because I broke my leg, but I watched the live stream. That guy actually voted, and that guy told his 12 friends to vote. And so
He may have also been sending the link out saying, hey, go. That's what I'm,
Yeah.
we're
So-
saying the same kind of thing, actually, because, I think the campaign, they did a much better job of staying on message than we did. And part of it was, I think, being the first ones out there. Part of it is actually still, everybody out there is doing this is still a pioneer. We don't, it's not like a proven way to do this, and we're probably going to get another piece of user-generated something out there like a Will I Am thing.
Anybody
Yeah.
tweeting his comments here? See.
And I will say, in terms of like West Wing Week, some of the stuff that you guys saw or whatever, the real success of that was taking a new media thing and actually applying a lot of old media strategies to making it more successful.
Let me show you a couple of things. Dan, you have so we mentioned this earlier, Twitter, right? And we mentioned when bin Laden was killed. So Rumsfeld's chief of staff, so I'm told by every person they've killed bin Laden, hot Dan, okay? Now, that was blasted out 300 times in 2 minutes, became the first unofficial confirmation, if we can call it unofficial confirmation, as to the, and I remember, because I was out in LA at the time, and people were all whispering about this kind of
Do you
stuff.
remember what time this was?
It was at a Capitals hockey game. Capitals hockey game.
Oh, okay.
Only in Washington would you get a
How many
response.
followers?
Yeah,
That's
geez,
a-
sorry.
But so listen, I was out in LA, I was at this big fancy rooftop party, somebody comes up to me, it was a bunch of, anyway, they said, do you know anything about this? I called my friends at CNN, and they said, we've got it confirmed, but we've only got it from one source, we haven't gone on the air yet. And this stuff is out running all over the place. The other one, Dan had the whole sort of internet flap that we had not long ago, the whole SOPA thing. How many of you guys were following that? All right. So Google hangs the black armband over the. So on January 18th, right? You have this blackout. The 3.9 million related tweets. 7 million people signed Google's petition. 8 million contact their representative in Congress through Wikipedia. Now, before the blackout, there were 80 supporters and 31 opponents in Congress. Afterwards, there were 65 supporters and 101 opponents. So this changed a lot on Capitol Hill. They were positively inundated. Are campaigns and politicians prisoners of Twitter now?
Well, I don't,
Is
prisoners.
this what's driving what used to be called the news cycle?
No. I think, look, there's tremendous power in it, but it's the same power that, 4,000 phone calls into the congressman, or
Bringing Star Trek
or
back.
200 people at the 200 people at the at his district office used to do before this. I mean, they were always freaking when they got 500 letters, right? I mean, I remember there was like kind of a barrier where they got 500 letters on an issue. It meant it was a really big issue, and they actually had like kind of a scale. I mean, this is like 10 years ago, but now the scale's changed.
Letters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, look, in the Dean campaign, this is what really interesting. The Dean campaign, we decided to put up the number, to put up undecided voters, and you could pull down 10 names of undecided voters and write a letter to people about why they should support Dean. And it never dawned on us, but we would get anecdotal. We'd go running around out there on the campaign trail, and people would say, "You're doing something really different," because I haven't gotten a handwritten letter from anybody, from my mom, my son, in 10 years, and I'm getting them from people who are telling me that I should look at Howard Dean. I mean, there are a lot of things. It's really interesting how this medium is sort of changing things, and in a lot of ways, very retro in some respects.
I want to ask a couple more questions and show another video, and then I want to open it up and make this a conversation here this evening. Before I show some of the stuff that Arun will walk us through, I do want to ask this question. Twitter's 140 characters, blogs are sort of blasts in many cases. I'm fascinated by what you said, that actually the most effective thing you think was streaming. There's a lot of concern, and some I share, that a lot of this is taking the seriousness out of campaigns, if there was ever such a thing as seriousness in campaign. But to seriously engage an issue becomes reduced to 140 characters and an even shorter soundbite. Is that right or wrong?
I think that's definitely has to be an evolutionary, thing. Whether 140 characters is better or worse than the 10-second, soundbite that'll be perfect for television, which has been around for a while. I think, being reductive, trying to make complex things into small slogans has been politics for, the 20th century. I don't necessarily think that that's a huge constraint. Although, I think you need to be more clever to try to be able to explain things, but I think people are much smarter than they give them credit for when they're given something that's far too simplistic, that they disregard that as being inauthentic.
I mean,
999,
Yeah, I'd say
999. That was pretty high-minded.
I think it's providing an entryway into the debate and into participating. I mean, we've got a citizenry that hasn't had a big history of really being active in politics. I mean, they participate, and I think what's happening is, it's quick and easy. I can enter the debate. I can throw ideas out there on a blog or on Twitter. 140 characters, easy to do, and I'm now engaged in what's in the debate. I mean, whether the Catholic Church, what's going on right now, just in Planned Parenthood and Komen and the president and the Catholic Church and all that, and people are actually expressing their views and engaging in the debate. Then what happens is, by becoming that engaged at that just a little bit notch above where they were, you start to get more people are actually doing some, getting out from behind the machine and going out on the street and knocking on doors or showing up at a rally. And so I think it's actually increasing participation and discussion, which I think is a lot healthier than the TV. I mean, just telling us, and you
Hope
sort of
springs
passively.
eternal.
Yeah, no, and I could be wrong about that, but it's so far I think that's what it's doing, more of that than the bad stuff. And there's a lot of bad stuff.
You think so?
Yeah.
It seems like a more intelligent, even at 140 characters, in civil debate than I would say a lot of what we're seeing, for instance, in the primary with negative ads and how that's proliferating.
You have a little media parade you want to show.
Yeah, this is good. So we're talking about traditional media. So this is the very most traditional media we have. No, this is a Hillary Clinton ad from March 2000 and whatever year it was. Was that 8?
Yes. More ancient history.
Is this her announcement?
No, this is the 3 a.m. ad. But it's so old school, it's actually based on a Walter Mondale ad from 1982. So this is,
I worked for Walter Mondale. There was a
Did he
great
approve
ad
this
for Walter
message?
Mondale.
It made sense for us. Yeah. Walter Mondale was a friend of mine.
No, it killed Gary Hart in '84.
Go ahead.
But I know which one you're talking
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. Whether it's someone who already knows the world's leaders, knows the military, someone tested and ready to lead in a dangerous world. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I'm.
By the way, weird casting of the father, right? Like, he looks a little too young, you're not sure, kind of looks like a little bit threatening. I think if that's like that.
Kind of looks like a child
Right,
predator.
it's like, it's not, there's something wrong.
The whole thing is like 1984, the Soviet Union with all its missiles are aimed at, we were talking about the shield in the sky.
Yeah, and there was this red phone that you worried
and there was
about
a red
ringing.
phone, and if that damn thing rang,
trouble.
we were all gone. So in that context, it had like a
Right,
lot
the phone
of
rings
power.
now, they ask, who is this?
Yeah,
Like,
who
you
is
know,
this?
they're not sure. Like, there it was like, oh yeah, you know.
It's like so
Corby.
weird. I don't even know what they. It was like, yeah, they had some leftover hack like me who'd been around in 1984 and decided, hey, it worked, let's try it. I don't
But
know.
we
Oh, it was to
were,
scare the crap out of people.
Yeah.
but we were
But there
scared of
wasn't-
this. You know what I mean? This was something the campaign was like this, you know, this is starting Pennsylvania and there was this slog and like, you know, it did feel bad. And so the campaign definitely wanted to hit back as fast as possible. And
Your
I think-
campaign.
Our campaign, the Obama,
The Obama
campaign.
campaign.
And I think that the two different ways we did are very illustrative of the powers of, you know, internet versus television. And so the first one we'll see is, you know, the ad guys, you know, the guys who made our ads, not the new media team who made, like, you know, the videos on the road, made this response ad to it, which was good, clever, and done within 24 hours. So for them, very, very quick.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. There's a phone ringing in the White House. Something's happening in the world. When that call gets answered, shouldn't the president be the one, the only one, who had judgment and courage to oppose the Iraq war from the start? Who understood the real threat to America was Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, not Iraq? Who led the effort to secure loose nuclear weapons around the globe? In a dangerous world, it's judgment that matters.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Now, I got to say one thing. Whoever hired the guy for the voice for this thing is brilliant, because he sounds just like the guy in the Smucker's ad.
It's very Americana, yeah, it's
Right? It's
really
like-
nice, yeah.
So go
It has
ahead.
to be good. No, I think it's, you know, it's really good, and it's, you know, in that they take the limitations of what a traditional media company can do quickly. Very smart to use as much of the old stock footage from Getty as they could to make it basically exactly the same thing. And not only does it make a good counter argument, but at the very least it muddies the water. You know, like it muddies the water at the very least. But that kind of old school capacity is not necessarily can't cut through the debate, and also couldn't sort of take advantage of special conditions on the ground. And so a special condition on the ground presented itself when the young lady who you saw in both these ads, who was sleeping in bed peacefully before the molester guy comes in, turned out to be, you know, a child actress from the late 80s who had grown up to become not only an Obama supporter but a precinct captain in Seattle. And so somebody saw on the news that she was on the news talking about how she thought this was lame and she didn't think it was you know, a good thing. And so
Wait, so she's in the ad as a little kid in stock footage, but she's
yeah,
grown up
yeah. And then her
now
brother was
working
watching
for
The
Obama?
Daily Show and saw.
So how brilliant of
yeah.
it is the Clinton campaign to use a child actress who's out actually now working for Obama?
You know, we all step in it sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one that's kind of common. I mean, it's hard to go through stock footage and you get the eureka moment, it's exactly what you've been looking for. Now, how are you going to track that person down 20 years later?
Okay, so anyway, so she's on the ground working.
So she's on, and so, you know, we had this basically traveling movie studio, which was me and a couple other people. And so she's in Seattle, I'm in Mississippi. You know, I think it was right around that primary. And just immediately, you know, we wrote a script, flew to Seattle, went to sleep, woke up, went to her house, filmed her for an hour, got to the airport, edited it. Joe Roxbar said it looked a little weird, but I re-edited it. It was fine, and it was up within, you know, less than 24 hours.
Hillary Clinton recently used stock footage of a little girl sleeping peacefully to make a political ad, the kind of footage normally used in commercials for pajamas and cough syrup. But she wanted to scare you into voting for her, first by tinting the footage blue, then by adding a scratchy voice.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep.
That little girl in the stock footage was me, 8 years ago, and I'm here to tell you that I'm not scared. I reject the politics of fear that Senator Clinton uses to drum up votes. Long before I even saw this ad, I had embraced hope and volunteered for Barack Obama as a precinct captain in Washington State. I'm so proud of what I've been doing. Find out how you can get involved at BarackObama.com and reject the tactics that drive us apart. I'm Casey Knowles, and I approve this message.
Actually, the longest part of the process of making this was convincing her father that I actually worked for the Obama campaign. He was like, how do I know? I was like, that is such a good question. I was like, can I email you from my Barack Obama email address? She was like, can't you fake that stuff? I was like, probably. I'm not smart enough to, though. What was really great was not also being on the internet, not having that 31-second limit. We could actually have this ad tell two stories. One, the story of how a negative ad is made, and then two, the Casey Knowles unique story.
And then you have the evangelists, and you have plenty of them sending that around.
And we got the home run on this, which is what we consider home run, is they played this in its entirety on every cable channel and almost every show.
Because the cable channels are like lemmings, and we'll just follow on them.
So instead of paying for a minute ad on TV, which is crazy, we literally paid nothing and had it play on TV just as much, and with that extra stamp of authenticity that only Wolf Blitzer can do.
Only Wolf Blitzer. But
no.
Do you have any idea how many views that got?
No, it's very hard to say because for some reason, actually, the original one, it's on BarackObama.com, is not up anymore. But it's sort of, a lot of times their videos, especially the clever ones, they spin sideways instead of going in deep, so it's hard to keep track because other people download them and then re-upload them so that they can sort of take advantage of the hits. But you don't worry about that once you get it on TV because that's actually where everybody still is.
You have another one, right?
Now, not to be outdone, John McCain thought to himself, 3 a.m., I think they should be calling me.
It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
Uncertainty, dangerous aggression, rogue nations, radicalism.
I know Senator McCain has a lifetime of experience that he will bring to the White House, and Senator Obama has a speech he gave in 2002.
Hillary's right. John McCain for president.
So you get a remix from the other side, yeah.
Who made that?
They did.
That is one of the worst ads.
Oh, I don't know.
Isn't that what, Joe, is that not a terrible ad?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's someone
That's
sort
why
of,
I think about it.
but it is sort of like an old media person sitting on the
Forgotten
sidelines
about
and
that.
trying to kind of mix
Well,
up and failing.
In the ground, it reminds me of a lot of Meg Whitman's stuff.
Oh, that
So
machine
bad,
and all
yeah.
that.
Because it was a tough race, but they had $185 million that they spent on TV, and it was all stuff like that, just weird. You go like, what are they talking?
But there were rockets and guys with guns,
Yeah.
and
Well, that's another one where it looks like they're trying to recreate 1980. That same fear of the
or
nukes
68,
coming
yeah.
in.
We're going to scare you.
Yeah.
Right. And
Well, the Daisy ad.
But that worked. The Daisy ad.
Yeah.
How many of you have seen the famous 1960? Right, the Daisy ad.
Again, achieving the home run where you spend very
once.
little and then
It
it gets
aired once.
replayed on on the news and stuff.
It aired once.
It's still
Let's just sort of open it up for some comments, questions, thoughts, and if you don't come up with any, I will keep going. But
I find it interesting that I think the same person who you just mentioned, Kate Albright, your colleague, right,
Mhm.
was also with you the night of the screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? I find it interesting that the transition from her from journalist, because she's worked for CNN, and the political communicator working for you. But it's illustrative in that, do you need journalists anymore?
Well,
how many journalism majors do we have in the room? Please say yes.
Can you just walk out quickly? We're gonna have a
sure
little
all the
time
journalists in
here.
the room. Kate's went back into journalism. But I
Yes,
think
she has.
she went from 04 journalist, 08. I want to be a influential, I want to work with the
I
campaign.
mean, I think this is an interesting discussion to have, but with Kate specifically, I think she was always a documentarian, which is something different than a journalist. Even when she was a journalist, she was a sort of unwilling journalist, and so I think had sort of more in connection with the kind of.
I also think she kind of caught the bug in the Dean camp. I don't mean this.
Yeah,
I
from
mean,
y'all,
she
for sure.
saw this. I mean, she was there from the very beginning. I mean, we had like 481 people in it. And I just saw.
In a way, though, I remember hearing this from other people in the campaign, that you could talk over the journalists. You didn't need, since you had the access to the press, like you said, right? You needed them less in a way than you did in 04.
Well, the campaign doesn't. The campaign doesn't need the press, and probably now the press is.
Come on. You can't mean that literally.
What?
Campaigns
As
don't
much.
need the
I'm going
press.
to put a dot.
Yeah, I would say as much. What I mean by that is, but it's becoming so easy. I'll be honest, becoming so easy to manipulate in terms of creating the video that they all go, like you said,
They don't have
ladies
enough
go
content,
put on the air. I mean, in a lot of ways, they're pretty easy to use and for your purposes.
Thanks,
and
Buzz.
you have and you have ways now with your own army of evangelists out there who are the four friends that send you the note saying that the movie sucks, who are now saying this Will I Am video or this look at
Casey, yeah.
look at Casey, what a bunch of idiots from the Clinton campaign or whatever they're sending along with that as a message, and then and so they're not as important as they used to be, and now they're more dangerous than they used to be because the only thing they can really do is, in a lot of ways, create the moment that is the big problem.
I mean, are they doing that in the GOP primary now? Are they the ones who are building up and propping down, these constant flows? I think it's
They're more dangerous. The reporters are more dangerous now than they were
because they can create the one moment.
How can they? But wait, you're contradicting yourself.
No.
Because on the one hand you say they've got less control, and now you say they can create the one moment.
No, what I'm
You're getting tough,
Yeah.
accusing him contradicting.
Both of those things are true. They're losing control, but at the same time, you're going to get asked that question that you weren't ready for. The only place that's going to happen is from a journalist. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
That's not new. That's what I've been covering campaigns forever. That's exactly what you dream
that's why,
of asking the campaign
right.
questions.
And I'm saying that's why, from a campaign point of view, you don't need them anymore, right? Because the only thing they can do is screw you up. I mean, I think that's kind of what. That's why I'm being honest about it. It's like otherwise, I've got people who can send my message out. I've got a platform to get my message out. I can get CNN to run my.
No, it's 100% right. And it's
So
the way
who serves the
people think.
public?
I think that journalists have a very specific and important service to the public to do. And I think this discussion we're having now about whether or not they're able to do it in this way, it means what they do is
no one's
important, and
tweeting
they need to go about it in a
gotta work
different
with
way.
these guys.
Because the old way,
It's a
and
little
I
late.
would say that reporters are dangerous, more dangerous than they used to be because they're wounded animals now. They feel wounded and so they're acting out. Right? No, I'm not being absolutely
It's
serious.
getting
about
ugly.
this. And that's why they do these
I
things where
think
they
just
go crazy.
You're tweeting. I think journalists are very, very important.
But no, they are important. They do is important, and they need to rely less on their old tactics, which were we have the technological means to present your message to America. It's like now we're like, so you owe us this, and we'll
So
give
you
you
could
that.
make the
They have
argument.
nothing to give us
You
anymore.
could make the
but
argument
they
now
still
that
want
journalists are
stuff.
more important than ever because with all this noise, with all this propaganda that the campaigns can put out unfiltered, unfettered, with the friendlies who are going to tweet it everywhere, that the reporters have to come in and say and be the truth brigade. I mean, it's like how many of you guys have seen the Pinocchio column in the Washington Post?
They do
which
have
is
to do that, but
hugely
they're not.
popular because otherwise, how do you sort?
That's what they should be doing. They're not doing it.
More investigative, more stuff, and less sort of
I
like.
don't think they're doing that.
On the campaign, I remember a photographer from the AP was very patiently explaining to me why we had to have a protective pool, which is when you allow your candidate to be followed 24 hours by the press, because otherwise there was no way people were going to see pictures of him. And he was quoting these fantastic figures of how many people see his pictures every day, which was well below the traffic we had going every day to BarackObama.com, and it was just hard not to roll your eyes.
Did you roll your eyes?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
This is a naive question. Are the politics of America changing with the new media, or it's the political communication?
I'm sorry.
Or the new media changing the American politics? If so, please give an example. or you mean it's changing, the new media changed the American political communication?
In other words, is media changing politics, or are politics changing media? Is that basically what you're asking? If I got that right or not quite?
Well, the first part you're right.
Okay.
It's tricky.
I think so. And I
You
think
think what?
that it's changing, that's the new media is changing politics, changing the way things work. Basically what it's doing is it's dismantling the hierarchy of both parties. That Barack Obama in a lot of ways probably could not have beaten the Clintons without new media. And I'm talking about if you only had traditional ways to raise the money, traditional ways to get your message out. Bill and Hillary Clinton had all those locked up. They had the party chairs. I mean, the operational pieces of the party, the party establishment. Under normal circumstances, it's very rare for somebody to get past that. And almost no one has had control of the apparatus the way they did. And certainly Obama was acceptable to that apparatus. I'm not saying that, but I think there's no way he could have beat them. I think this year in a party, the Republican Party, that you constantly, that is renowned for everybody getting in line and going with the guy whose turn it is, the establishment in the party cannot shut down this process. And the reason is, whether it's Ron Paul or Santorum or Newt, they have a different vehicle to get their message out. And let me give you like one big example of what I'm talking about. We talked a little about Fritz Mondale, the vice president in 1984, the phone ad. In 1984, when a guy named Gary Hart, literally took second in Iowa with 19% of the vote, he turned into a rocket ship. I mean a rocket ship. We lost 18 straight states with this guy. He's sort of the guy who caught fire. Here's the problem of 1984, and the reason, there's only one reason Fritz Mondale, turns out Fritz Mondale won that nomination. It's because back then, all those people who sent Gary Hart money that day when he took second in Iowa and became the other guy, they wrote these things called checks. They put them in these things called envelopes with things called a stamp and mailed it to Colorado. When it got to Colorado, taking 5 days to get there, they then went to a bank that held these things called out-of-state checks for 7 days. The entire, this really happened. The guy is like 8 states go by before he can cash the checks, right? Today, Santorum scores 3 wins, and within hours, he's got $2.something million. This is it, so it's disrupting it's disrupting the establishment of the parties, and it's creating more opportunity for candidates from outside the establishment of the parties to actually get the nomination, and in Obama's case, actually win the presidency. And I think most likely will end up soon, in relatively near terms, putting a third independent candidate, a kind of Perot-like candidacy. I'm not saying they win, but I think you're going to see a very serious persona try to run as an independent and harness all this, in 2012? Could happen in 2012.
Joe Trippi predicts 26. Joe Trippi predicts third party.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. One of these. There will not be 2 parties. There will be another entity, I think.
I mean, but there's this new thing, the billionaires primary, basically, though, which
Americans elect, is that?
Citizens Unite, it kind of throws a real wrench in figuring a lot of this stuff out, because there's 2 separate parallel processes happening. And so, it's very bad science to try to figure out what's doing what. But, that third party candidate will have to have a certain percentage of billionaires on their side, or they will lose.
Well,
or be a billionaire.
The 2 things you want a party, there were 3 things. The platform is complete crap. Forget about it.
It has been for years.
The convention can decide that we're going to go to Mars and back and everything else, and the candidate.
That's where most of the conventions take place.
Yeah. And the candidate walks out and does like what are you talking about? You know, forget it. The candidate decides the nominee decides what the platform is. So forget that. The only two things are a donor structure, fundraising structure, the names, addresses, phone, and the ability to move the money in, and an organization. That's it. Well, I think both Dean and then big time Barack Obama showed you didn't need that apparatus to raise a $500 million. You don't need the party apparatus to do it, and you don't need the party with all those people out there that you can get funnel into your organization. You don't need the party organization anymore. So it's only, I think it's undoubtedly changing the structure of the parties, and it's I find it, particularly if both parties tend to fail to listen, like I think both of them have done a pretty bad job of doing. I'm not talking about the president, I'm talking about the whole enchilada here. I think people squeeze another party out of it, or another entity out of it at some point.
Let's come for another question here. Go ahead.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet is how personal new media is made in politics. And I was thinking back about a lot of the alleged infidelity of past presidents, and a lot of the personal problems that let's talk about now. And you've seen already in the past campaign, Herman Cain go down very, very quickly for his infidelities. And sort of wanted to ask how you think how personal the presidency is.
Could you all hear the question? Okay.
I think, getting a deeper window inside, which we were able to do with, again, it's personalities though, because, with President Obama, it's like what you see is what you get, there's just not a lot of duplicity there. But I do think that there has been a parallel track of a public appetite for not just transparency, but just sort of for process stories of all kinds, whether it's a reality show about like a repo shop or whatever, people want to, look inside and see how stuff works. And so I think I think that's making them more forgiving. I think for your Herman Cain example, you also have Newt Gingrich, who turns out his three wives didn't really matter at all. It wasn't something people were that concerned about. But I think whenever these things hurt the candidate, it's exactly what Joe was saying in the beginning. It's because it's something in their authenticity or lack of authenticity in their story that actually is what people latch onto as
Okay. Trivial pursuit question. How many in the room know who Jennifer Flowers is? Okay. If Bill Clinton had been running in this era where everything's tweeted and commented on, like that, and have Jennifer Flowers moments and,
No, because that stuff was
what would
everywhere.
happen? Would he have survived?
I feel like, yeah. He was inescapable. I was young, and all I knew Jennifer Flowers everywhere.
What about someone like Clarence Thomas? What would when Clarence Thomas was going for
I think Anita Hill would have had maybe a better support network of people than being kind of thrown out there to dry. But
I don't think there was anything you didn't know.
No, this was again.
The only difference.
So you're saying this doesn't matter.
The only difference in the Clarence Thomas thing is you are getting to the SOPA moment, where in other words, had you had the internet in all its magnificence that we have today, then you could have. Would there have been a trillion emails, etc., into that place, and would because of the House and because of the Senate, would they have all run away and said we're not doing it? We're not confirming it. That's possible, but in terms of the elected thing with the president, everybody knew, and I think the most significant thing that happened for Clinton was Gary Hart being caught with Donald Rice in 1988 and being forced out of the race, and so it made. I think we get a little bit more as a country. Get a little every time one of those happens, and we sort of have a little conversation with ourselves about that we really mean to do that. Are we really that into it? And that actually helped Clinton a little bit when it happened 4 years later. I think if he'd been the first, he would have gone down in 2 nanoseconds like Gary Hart did. But because Hart kind of got taken out, it changed the way people thought about it, or changed the way the press, I think, actually reported it too. I think there's a lot of guilt about.
Yeah, but it would have been interesting because this comes back to framing the message and the role that the public would play. They were fairly successful, the Clinton campaign, at trying to frame and reframe and deny Flowers and all. And if there had been a brigade out there that was competing, it might have been a very different dynamic. Another question. Let's come over this side. Go ahead.
With the rise of new media and digital video, YouTube, what's the future of the 30-second TV ad on prime time in politics?
For the time being, it's fine. I mean, it's the major way that everyone communicates with you. With you. That's how they're getting you to buy things, do things, want things.
Yeah, it's like radio's not as powerful as it used to be because of TV, but Rush Limbaugh's still got a ton of power, and people still buy radio ads. So I think the power of television, mostly because of how fragmented all of us are, not because I watched 3 network TV stations. That was it for the first 10 years or so of my life. I mean, it sounds bizarre, but that's where we were. And then I had 12 or 15 cable channels for the next 10, and then all of a sudden, now I have 500. That fracturing makes it less powerful. It's harder to get all of us, everybody in this room, to see the ad, to see an ad. But so the power of it's going down, but it's still going to be the main way that people get messaging.
And it's also a more effective way to get messages, to you without changing them because, watching TV. For instance, I like to watch TV before I go to sleep because it relaxes me and then I can go to sleep. Because I have much experience. I'm on the computer, I'll be on there for hours and I won't even realize that, 12 hours have gone by.
I thought you didn't sleep.
This is the problem because the computers now, they take over with the things. And if I just had my TV, I would just be curled around with it.
All right, let's go over here for questions.
A dozen election cycles ago, TV was the new media, and as it has grown, and now the internet is growing, so has the power of fat cats in elections. How do you see the new media as either empowering or threatening the power of fat cats as opposed to party elders? And how do you see a danger that populist, jingoistic zealots could usurp the power of the new media?
Impossible. I mean, how would it be usurping it, though? I mean, that value judgment, they could be using it like anyone else. This populist person that you're referring to, whether they're Pepsi or whether they're
Yes,
really long.
when you are leaderless and led by popularity, when you're not filtered by editors and such, it allows more zealotry. And
But was it breeding extremism then? Is that?
not necessarily extreme, but including extreme. And including racism.
Well, I mean, look, I tell people this stuff doesn't know, the technology and the tools do not know evil from good or, any of that stuff. I hate to think, even for 2 nanoseconds, think about what Hitler could have done with the internet. I mean, there would have been cells all over this country, and I think, and probably all over the globe. I mean, much different. Yeah. So I think that's no, and how that would get knocked down, I have no idea. So I think that's a very real, danger that the right persona out there could use it to
But at the same time, the editorial boards of all the newspapers in Germany didn't seem to do very much,
No, I'm not.
You know what I'm saying?
You
It's
have
like
a way to.
the idea the editorial boards are the ones who are protecting
But
us, and now that they're gone.
He couldn't connect directly.
No, obviously.
But Joe, I got to say,
industrialized
this is why I
communications.
reacted in a way that a few moments ago, when you talk about how you don't need the press anymore. All right, how how the press is kind of almost.
I was talking about as a guy who's running the campaign.
I understand that, but the point is, it's
I want all
not
you guys to go away.
But it's not a big leap. I mean, it is a big leap. Let's hope it's a very big leap. But to go from we can control the message to we can propagandize, because because that's effectively what campaigns are doing, right?
Right.
You just hope within the bounds. But if in the hands of evil, it becomes a very different thing.
Yeah, no,
He's agreeing with you.
I would agree with that. The
And
first,
what about how could fat cats
the,
abuse the power of the new media? How could, if I just had money, how could I throw that at using new media to be effective to multiply or turn my cash into political victory?
By the Huffington Post.
I think it can happen by creating something like that, like a medium. But I think kind of like launching campaigns would be hard to do. I mean, only because you have to, again, you have to have people carrying that message and spreading it for you, moving it. I mean, it can happen, I guess. But
Why can't you argue that it's harder? That people did that, and we had newspaper editors who marched us off the war, and they bought these monolithic structures, and they truly.
I think Twitter is a more level playing field, even though a fat cat still has more weight in it than a little guy. You know, you can buy promoted ads, you can do things, but at the end of the day, it's not as it was when it was editorial boards and newspapers and things with people, with people who can take money and be bribed.
Okay, let's go to another question off the floor. In the back. I know you.
Going off of the previous question that you asked about new media or the TV spots, can't you argue that the reason that we still have, the reason that the TV spots are still so important is because the people who vote are over a certain age, those are the biggest voters, most consistent voters, and they still watch TV. Whereas I'm 23 years old and a lot of my friends don't have a TV and they have their giant Mac set up as in front of their couch and that's their TV. So can't you argue that give it 15, 20 years till those, no offense, people die off?
Oh, thanks.
Then it will.
It's going to be amazing. Drugs are going to be legal. All we got to do is get rid of these people. I would say that that maybe yes to some extent, but one of the surprising things, and I think that's why working in the internet is so great, because you get all these metrics so quick, and the demographics, for instance, for the Obama campaign, the people who watch our YouTube videos is much, much older than you think. Much, in fact, much older than most of the people in this room. Actually,
it was 47 in the Dean campaign.
It was something very similar. It was like between 45 and 55 years old. So people are, I think, what it's akin to is it's more like, the new campaign literature, as opposed to them waiting in their mailbox to get a pamphlet from each campaign and compare and contrast them. People log on to the websites, watch the videos, and I think that's happening throughout all the ages.
Yeah. Also, you might be right about 20 years ago. We're saying in the near future. I mean, next decade, TV. I just don't see TV. I think TV's power might erode. But
right now it's still king.
It's still king. Will be king, just a little bit smaller king than it.
For how
Constitutional
long?
monarchy in 2016.
For how long?
At least a decade or two.
I wonder about.
I can't say before. I don't think before 20.
Well, no. I mean, first of all, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. I mean, within 5 years, you're not going to know what TV is versus what's the. I mean, you're already seeing this with Netflix and everything else. I mean,
you're going to be watching on your your variation of an iPad.
Yeah, but
I mean, you're not going to need a television. Why would you even bother with that unless you're a big screen?
Let me explain something. Google and they'll tell you this. Google, Yahoo, all these guys are racing, and what they're racing for is to be the king of video search. And why do they want to be the king of video search? Because there's going to be literally 1 million TV channels out there. So in a world of 1 million, a million TV channels, trying to find, that's what I mean about it. It's going to become more fragmented, and that makes it much more difficult to get that in one sense, much more difficult to get that single spot to everybody see it. Here's the difference. Where we're going is, you guessed it, they now will have so much data on you that they will know exactly what spot to deliver to you on the millionth channel that you are watching, and it will be just...
It'll practically star you.
Yeah, it'll practically star you. So you're not... What I guess is we're having this conversation about what's, where TV's going. It's going to be a blend where the net and TV join up, and they now have the data on every single person they're sending the spot to, and and literally packaging it with you in it, and I don't, we'll be celebrating it, I'm sure, But it's going to be, yeah, but that's where I think it's just going to change some of the power structure, but not change.
And evolutionarily will also change the aesthetic. You know, things will go away from being visual to being almost purely, I know, the audio evangelist, but it'll be mostly audio, because when you watch things on your computer, you're doing a million other things. And so if the message is not said, you really run the risk of people not getting it. And so a lot of these classic, you know, beautiful television ads will be a thing of the past.
I have a question about once you're in office, like what the White House could do to communicate their message with the general public, or
They should make a show with funny clips.
well, right, but like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like once President Obama got elected, he started losing on like the public opinion polls and the public opinion front, and a lot of that, I don't know why it happened, but I feel like could have been controlled had the message been consistent and frequently communicated to the general public. So what can one do once they're elected to office, whether it's the White House or a congressional office, to make sure that their constituents and their supporters that they had before the election stay with them throughout the 4-year or whatever?
I actually think it's much different for the White House or for a congressional official. I want to speak to one thing. So, being a member of Congress is essentially just handling correspondence, right, between you and so actually, like, the stuff that's happening is revolutionary for them, because literally all they do all day is just back and forth with their folks. So I do think you will see more and more of that. You'll see more automatic more robots reading the mail and telling them, you know, what their constituents think, and you know, in real time and stuff. But in terms of
better connect with people that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true, right?
Yeah.
Probably already exists, and I just don't know about it.
No, I don't think they have that yet. I don't think they figured it out yet. But they will.
I mean, I understand that the governing message is different and it must be communicated a little bit differently, but I feel like that there's a role that the social media can play in terms of communicating it well with the public.
I think that the White House has done a lot of, and it was a learning curve, and a lot of it was technological learning curve. You know, like you show up the first day and they're like, hey, you can't use, you know, YouTube because it's got cookies, and you're like, oh my God, that takes 3 weeks to sort out with, you know, a bureaucrat. Like, we need to use this thing. So there was some of that, but like some of the stuff that they've done, like healthcare by the numbers, you know, where every day they would tweet a different number and explain why it was important, stuff like that, I think was, you know, to whatever extent messaging was effective, was fairly effective along the lines you're talking about. Whether it needs to kind of be more than that, and if there's new ways to do that, it's hard to innovate inside government, but I think, you know, folks are trying.
Government is a disaster at this stuff. I mean, like, the FEC regs said that federal election reports had to be in paper. I mean, they were not.
It's kind of like signing up for classes at GW.
Yeah, and you had 15 days to file. So when all of a sudden you've got literally hundreds of thousands of people contributing to you over the internet, the law wasn't made for that. You get into government and like, look, if I decide I hated a piece of software and I wanted to switch it out tomorrow inside the campaign, tomorrow, one day, done, right? You go inside the government and it's got to put it out to bid, competitive, blah, blah. 4 years later, man, if you're really lucky, you know, so you're the Obama campaign and you're like, you know, and all of a sudden you hit,
yeah.
You know, how long did it take Obama to get his BlackBerry?
It took a little while, yeah. Or, you know, like, you know, we were Mac users at the White House. Quentin here was one of them too. You have very, very limited, you know, tech support. You know, they're like, what do you want me to do with that? You're like, I just want this to talk to that computer through this wire.
You're looking at a 486, you know, the top one.
What does that run? Windows 95? You're like, no. And actually, upgrading the servers from Windows 97 was like a big landmark in 2009 for the administration. We were like, stoked on.
So that's what you enter the dark age. They went from, I wasn't there. I can tell you that, in my view, they went from leading the space race to like going back to caveman days when they walked into that building and went like, and then just changing anything became going through government. You know,
Here's a great example. I have one technological example. The first weekly address I recorded, we needed to change a line in it, and so I went to the teleprompter operator, works for the you know, and said, I'm going to give you a new thing, and he said, can you put it on this? And he went into his pocket and he pulled out a floppy disk and handed it. Floppy disk? Yeah. I kept it as a souvenir to prove. I should have brought it tonight, but I haven't.
We have a museum for things like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that history lives at the White House.
So I'm personally obsessed with political fundraising and kind of fell into fundraising, new media fundraising by accident. And
Are you a fundraiser now?
I'm with the DCCC. So Robbie North is one of your old guys. I told him I was going to see you last week. It was kind of funny. So one of the things I learned is sort of like Plato's awakening kind of moment was like how they extract information from people, like whether it be through petitions or other media tricks. And what I want to ask is, what's the most clever way you've ever seen any campaign extract someone's data in your days?
Legal or?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I don't like this term extracting data. It makes it sound like going to the
Data
dentist.
mining.
Oh, come on.
I think the dinner with Barack was and continues to be just a great way to get people interested, to sign up, and to have this goal, this thing they want to do, this aspirational goal. And I think the reason they continue to do it is because they get it's you sign up for make a very low dollar contribution, say $3, and then you're eligible to be one of like 5 people end up having dinner with the president, which is actually the first thing I ever filmed the president doing in July 2007.
And when you sign up and you send $3 in,
They want to know some stuff,
You type in what?
I actually, I'm not being coy. I don't know the exact information.
Well, presumably the $3 comes in how?
Well, it comes in through a bank account, credit card, these kind of things like that. But that's not the real information that they're looking for. They want know where you live, what you're into, and the thing in 2008 is
what you're into.
What you're into, all that weird stuff you're into, they know about that. But one of the differences between 2012 and 2008, to loop back to that first question you asked me that I kind of avoided, is in 2008 it was just a gathering mission. You get this data, but there wasn't much you could do with it. Now, like you're saying, it's like with this information they can serve up so that the first video in your queue happens to be about curing the disease that you have. It's going to be very specific in that way. And you already see this with your Google ads. Sometimes it's funny because it's a little off, but sometimes you're like, hey, I'm kind of want to click that. I feel bad. That sounds interesting.
And for the Dean campaign, we did the same. It wasn't dinner with Dean. It was like a lunch thing that we did, but it was the same exact thing. It was definitely the best provider or gatherer of information.
Which is you have an organic experience attached to an electronic experience, because all this stuff people talk about replacing online. It's like that is still what's the most powerful.
Go ahead.
My question is for Mr. Trippi. In the movie So Goes the Nation about the 2004 election, Mark McKinnon, who was a strategist for President Bush, said that he thought that Howard Dean would probably have been a stronger candidate against George W. Bush because he had more conviction. And this was kind of a conventional wisdom in 03 too, because I remember George Stephanopoulos saying, oh, Kerry's boring, Dean's exciting, all this, but then along the way, Dean didn't get the nomination and then Kerry lost. Do you still think that Howard Dean would have been a stronger nominee? Do you think he would have gotten past that 49% that Kerry had?
No. I think McKinnon was right about what he was saying, and I think Dean, the persona of Howard and what Howard was about probably would have been better to put up against Bush. Even if we lost, it would have been better to lose that way. And we would have built, I think, taken a step in terms of getting more activists and people involved in the party than Kerry. I think people would have just been more energized. But the reality is that Howard I think people weren't watching us very early on. A lot of the press weren't watching us, and I think all of that would have come out in the general election. I'm going to give you like a great example. Very early on, Howard's favorite thing to do was to go out, and he'd start his speeches by saying, if Bill Clinton can be America's first black president, I want to be America's first gay president. And then, yes, Yes. And it, no. And the roof would come off the place at a Democrat. Oh, big time Democratic gathering. Great. And I would take him back and go.
Hit it.
You know, Howard, that I love what you're saying, but it's going to be a problem. Like, I don't think you want to. And he'd go, oh, yeah, you're right. And then, and he'd be good for about a week or two, and then he'd do it again, right? And what I mean is that part of what I think really happened, to be honest with you, is that the press, back then when we were doing those things, we were this cute, cuddly thing that couldn't possibly win. So, and by the way, they're not going to stop the front page. The New York Times is not stopping the press is to say some guy that you never heard of
From Vermont,
who's never going to be president of the United States, said he wants to be the first gay president. So, like banner headlines, guy you never heard of said. Okay, so basically, but it's all in the can. And I think what happened was we start to surge and we start to become looking like we're going to be the nominee. And a lot of those people were saying, please God, I didn't do my job. In other words, what's about to happen here is this guy's about to be the nominee, and they never told anybody any of this stuff. They never reported anything of it. And they all know it's back there, and they know Karl Rove had a camera running the entire time. And it's kind of like, if this guy becomes the nominee, I've given George Bush a freebie. I mean, I think that's sort of psychologically what was happening. So when Howard kind of does the screen, everybody goes, why did they make such a big deal about that? It was kind of like
they're waiting,
yeah, they were looking to say, this is who this guy really is. You need to know this before you. If the party wants to do it after we tell them this, then it's the party did it and we did our jobs. But
we that did our jobs. We
the press. Yeah.
I don't agree with you.
Well, I get to have my opinion. You do.
It's wrong. No, there's always that sort of waiting in the wings, that sense of the newcomer, and then you pounce because suddenly you focus like a laser on the new guy because the new guy is, and there were some real. I totally agree that there were issues in Dean's narrative. A doctor who was a governor from Vermont is going to run for president. How does that make any sense? And so he was totally beneath the radar. It's a funny way. In a funny way, it's kind of a little corollary to Gingrich's story. I mean, the media totally dismissed Gingrich because so many people in the media knew Gingrich said, there's no way that Gingrich could be president. And then suddenly he's surging and everybody pounces. I mean, it's that. Yeah. There's a dynamic there always, I think, with this sort of unexpected or stealth candidate or.
So all I'm saying is to answer the question, I think if the problem would have been we would have gotten to the general and then all these different kind of, there was Osama bin Laden who's innocent until he's proven guilty. That one
that doesn't make the movie.
Despite the fact that we have hate of him saying he did it. I mean, there was just a bunch of little things like that early on that were like hanging back there that I think. I still think we would have been better off. I mean, it's a party, but that's.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up in just a couple of minutes, but I don't want to let you leave without, since you've talked candidly and fascinatingly about the Democrats and all. Let's take a look for us very briefly at the Republican field this year, what's left of it, and who you think is. You talked a lot about authenticity. A lot of folks say that's Romney's big problem, that he's not authentic enough. Santorum is surging, or is he just the latest anti-Romney? Gingrich seems to have sort of withered out. Obama's numbers are up a little bit, seemingly with the economy. Forecast? Who are you watching? What are you watching for?
My own view is that I think Romney's in deep trouble. I think it's I'd bet on someone else being the nominee.
You bet that. So you don't think Romney's going to win the nomination?
I think that the odds are not much better than 50-50 for him right now, and probably on the but somewhere.
Bad.
Yeah, bad. It's not like and I still wouldn't count out somebody else getting into this thing.
At the convention or before?
Before. I think you need.
Who's credible? Who would be credible at that late date?
Yeah, Bush will not do it.
Jeb Bush may be who they go for if it goes broke.
I mean, I think they go to him every day.
Yeah.
The 3 a.m. phone call every night. It's Jeb, leave me alone.
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I don't
it's
know.
3 o'clock.
Yeah. I think there's a decent chance the establishment may abandon Romney and try to get someone else to come in, even if it's just. Once somebody pointed something out a couple days ago that is accurate. If Romney and Santorum just keep doing this sort of back and forth thing, California is so big that somebody could just enter and run in California. They get those delegates. They don't become the nominee, but they stop they stopped anybody in it.
You create numbers. You create it's not a brokered convention, a broken convention.
Right, and so I think right now that's where I think this is going. I'm still scarred by my 1984 experience with Mondale, in which we had essentially, he was a great guy, but a weak front runner. And the Democratic Party kept looking for somebody else. John Glenn, the movie The Right Stuff had just come out. He was on the cover of Time magazine. Everybody thought he would, in a lot of sort of Rick Perry almost, like everybody thought he's the guy. If anybody's going to take on Mondale, it's John Glenn. Went to 7% and never came back from single digits, right? You know, after a pretty strong month of entry. Then a guy named Alan Cranston got in, California, and he's running on the nuclear freeze. It's kind of the left of the left, and he starts beating us in straw votes, like the Ames straw vote with Michelle Bachmann. Beats us in the Wisconsin straw vote, beat us in 3 or 4 straw votes, and Cranston sort of gets this little.
The most unlikely candidate you could possibly imagine.
Right. And so we kept going and going, but they kept looking, and Hart gets 19%, and he becomes the guy. Well, I think that's what's sort of been going on here with Republicans. Romney's never felt like he could do it to them. Both parties were in the same exact point. In 1984, Democratic Party was scared to death of Ronald Reagan being reelected. This year, the Republicans are scared to death of Obama being reelected. I mean, and terrified of it in ways I've not seen.
More than Clinton, more than they hated.
Oh yeah,
terrified.
I mean,
beyond, a real agenda,
beyond belief. So that terror, I think, in '84, what I saw on the Mondale campaign was every time they started to think we were it, all they saw were our flaws, that we couldn't beat Reagan. And once they saw that, they wanted to go get Gary Hart a couple more states. And it was, in this environment, every time they look at Ron, every time they settle on this is the hot guy, all they see, once they decide how hot he is, or she is, in the vodka, all they see are the flaws. And the flaws that say he can't beat Obama. The problem with that is the more Romney gets hurt now, the more states he loses, and the more he goes down with independents, the more, every time they look at him, he's going to look even more flawed and can't beat Obama, which is going to make them...
How do you handicap Santorum? Any chance?
Oh, man. That would be a dream for an against Santorum.
I mean, he wasn't even a good senator from Pennsylvania, you know what I mean? It's like...
I mean, they have to... That's why I think, what I think's happening is this sort of back from flawed to flawed. Then there's some adult somewhere's got to say.
Adults, you just spent an hour and a half telling us that the adults don't matter anymore.
Right,
it's a Twitterverse.
Well, somebody somewhere's got to be in a room saying like, you know, Mitch Daniel or Pawlenty, who I think.
All right, so quick.
So
there's Pawlenty, Bush, Chris Christie, who says no way, right, and everybody believes him. There's Mitch Daniels.
I think Mitch Daniels is their most likely guy who would say yes.
Yeah, I think he might say yes.
All right, so we have something to hang on.
But this is like, it's, you know, like, it's gotten so bad, like the last couple of days, like the fix was, yesterday, the fix was tweeting lists of the potential GOP 2016 field.
We're done with this one.
Which means, it's like, you know,
so you made the comparison to '84. Last question. We go. What do you think the chances are that Obama could actually win big the way Reagan won big 1984?
I think a lot will depend on, economic indicators, but I think that although the president obviously, hopes and expects to be reelected and will work very hard for that, it's a question of if he and his campaign does everything they need to do to make as few unforced errors as they did last time. I think it could be a big election, not just for the White House, but in Congress as well.
If he doesn't get 400 electoral votes, somebody didn't do their job. That's what I think.
See, I'm managing expectations much better.
Yeah, you're both Democrats. You're both Democrats.
No, I think there's a much bigger chance of him doing. I mean, where we started the year, everyone thought he couldn't get reelected, be a tough reelection, or it would be very, very close. I think there is a
Republicans just hemorrhaged all their independents.
They're literally losing. I've just never seen this like literally hemorrhaging independence is what's going on.
Like the numbers are crazy. It's like grass. It's absolutely.
It's like literally they crossed and the president's going way up with them where he had been down and they're falling apart.
They're where he was 2 years ago in the off year.
So
and that's measuring before this contraception
I do
stuff
agree
is really
too. I also agree that you could see. Look, there shouldn't have been any way that they couldn't take the Senate almost, and now I'm starting to think that's not going to happen, and they could lose the House. I mean, it's I wouldn't be. It could be really kind of a crazy year, almost the opposite of what people thought. And I'm not talking about that as a partisan. One of the things they did, which was a crazy, in my view, a crazy mistake, is on the Senate side, they ran congressmen in an anti-Washington, everybody wants to throw them all out. They actually have basically decided to run members of Congress against sitting senators. It's like you lose the advantage. The one advantage they would have had was to run.
Which is why Romney keeps saying I'm an outsider, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, so
I've never done a day in Washington.
Some of it's just been dumb, I think, on both sides. Not that everybody's been really smart about it, but I really think their recruitment was kind of really goofy for the year and it hurt themselves.
So let's thank Joe Trippi and Arun Chaudhary. We'll retweet you to see how accurate your predictions are. Thanks very much. Thank you, everybody.